Welcome to Writers Not Writing. This used to be a show where I interviewed authors about the ways they procrastinated, and I'm sure we'll still have some of that. But in these times, I want to use this show to highlight artists who are using their voices to push back against fascism. Whether we're writing or not writing, we need to be defending one another. I'm Benjamin Gorman, your friendly author in exile, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer, who hitched a ride in my suitcase. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff, and Doug does his best to make me sound better. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. You're going to enjoy today's show. And if you want a little more, become a patron of my Patreon, help to keep a roof over my head, and you'll get access to an ad-free version of the show with a bonus segment with each interviewee. Okay, here we go.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. So I am coming to you today from a different location, just Doug the producer and I today, and so since I'm not having to do the show over Zoom, I thought, hey, I'll go up to the roof and I'll film so you get a better background than just a brick wall behind me, and I get my phone camera, which is actually a better camera than the one that's, sitting on top of the computer. So, I thought some of this through. I thought, yes, there is a chance we'll get some traffic noise. You might hear some birds singing in the background. That's okay. That's, in exchange, you get to see a little bit of the skyline of Barcelona from the city where I am currently, or the city where I'm filming from, the residence where I'm currently living. For another week. We have to move this next week to a new apartment, so maybe I'll show that one off on a future show. But I thought that part through. I didn't think of the fact that it is a very sunny morning here in Barcelona, which is great, but I'm a bald guy, and so you may watch in real time as I burn. So we'll see. A sunburn. This is the kind of sacrifice I'm willing to make for you. So it's just Doug and I, and there were a few things that I wanted to get to talk to you about today. The first is kind of there's going to be a trajectory here: happy, sad, and kind of challenging. That's normal for this show. And then don't worry, we will end on a happier note. So the exciting positive news: we put out an all-call. Oh gosh, this would have been maybe a month ago, for an anthology. And the publishing company, NotAPipePublishing, has put out anthologies in the past. They're a lot of fun. They're a ton of work, because every single author needs their own individual contract, and it's just creating the ebook file with lots of different works is very challenging. But I thought, this is important. This is worth doing. We're going to put out a journal or an anthology. And in the past, we've done these with various themes. We did one with exclusively queer authors. I did not edit and select for that. That would have been inappropriate. Similarly, we did one with all women authors one time. I did not edit and select the pieces for that one as well, because again, that would have been inappropriate. But we did we did one that was really interesting where it was all stories within stories. It's called Stories Within, where we asked authors to write a story where someone would, partway through, then tell another story inside it, only the authors didn't know what story would be within their own. And the way it works is all the stories nest down within one another, and it was kind of an experiment to see, would this work as stories within stories within stories within stories. And to my kind of surprise, pleasant surprise, it worked very, very well. So that was to confirm the suspicion I had that especially kind of Western traditional story structure has enough of a regular pattern that you can put any story within that structure and it will still function. And so that was a really cool one. So we've done anthologies, but in this time in which we are living, we thought we would put out an all-call specifically for Antifa Lit, for people who wanted to fight back against fascism with their voices, because as I always say, fight with your voice while you still can. So we put out this all-call, and we got just an overwhelming number of submissions and a lot of authors really appreciated the opportunity. They just, they're frustrated and they're angry and they don't know what to do with that energy, and they're looking for ways to fight back. And there are lots of ways, and they are legitimate, and I would encourage you, do lots of things. You do not need to do one thing. You can protest and boycott. You can write to your congressperson and also use social media to say, hey, I'm writing to my congressperson and saying this is upsetting to me. There are lots of things you can do simultaneously to say this is not right. And one thing that authors can do and artists can do is use their art to speak out. And you're seeing this now more from, famous musicians. Green Day's been doing this forever, but I was just seeing this morning that they were, at Coachella doing their anti-MAGA version of American Idiot, which I appreciate. Use your voice when you can, right? So we wanted to create this opportunity, and then so many people were so excited about it that we thought this fascist uprising in the United States, and this is happening in other parts of the world as well. Germany is seeing a rise of their far-right party. The far-right party won in Italy, although it sounds like the people there are pushing back enough that it is being moderated to some extent. But this is a global phenomenon, and this will be an increasing global phenomenon as climate change pushes people who live in the equatorial world to cooler climates, which is a consequence of the behavior of people who live in the north, who live in the far, far south, in these wealthier countries who create the most global climate change. Well, when you create that climate change and push those people out, they then come to places where they can survive. And what ends up happening is people in the global north especially respond by saying, we are going to lose our sense of who we are. We're going to lose our identity, whiteness, if we let in the people we forced to come here, right? And so what we have seen, and we've seen this phenomena before, where we think of the Syrian refugees as fleeing a war, which is true. But what happened in Syria, and here's part of the story that I think gets downplayed, is the civil war broke out because of a terrible drought. And the terrible drought was a consequence of climate change. And so all these refugees then leave because the country is war-torn and come into Western Europe. And the response in many countries in Western Europe was, but, we don't want these people here. People that in many ways the global north forced to leave, right? So then you see this rise of right-wing authoritarianism. Somebody says to themselves, this is a political opportunity. Regardless of what their beliefs were before, as long as they are venal, greedy enough for power to say, here is an opportunity, they're saying, here is this new immigrant group, I will blame them, I'm going to cash in on people's anti-immigrant sentiment, and this is going to be the thing that propels me to power. This is a social political phenomena of the people, not the individual, right? The individual is just cashing in on an opportunity, but throughout the kind of Western world, for lack of a better term, you end up seeing politicians who try and cash in on this anti-immigrant sentiment, and you see a rise of right-wing fascism. Another factor in that is capitalism, as late-stage capitalism, is absolutely unsustainable. And so that politician has to say, here's who to blame, because the economic system is falling apart. It absolutely is unsustainable. This is not like, oh, this is just, the opinion of this writer out there. Like, Nobel Prize-winning economists have, Piketty wrote, a 500-page tome about the fact that capitalism will not last as it currently is structured. It's just going to funnel more and more wealth to the incredibly wealthy. And so unless you're willing to challenge that system, you're going to have more and more people living in misery throughout the world, including the wealthy world. And those folks are going to say, wait a second, I'm looking around me and there's these billionaires and they're doing really well. Who can I blame for the fact that I am not sharing in that? And if they're unwilling to challenge the economic system, and if they've been deceived into thinking that the economic system is completely fair, then they can be fooled into thinking, oh, so the fact that I am not doing well in late stage capitalism must be the fault of, I don't know, a handful of trans athletes at the NCAA level, right? Like, you know, whoever is the distraction group, and target all of this energy, turn it into hatred, aim it at these people. So realizing this is not going to go away in the same way global climate change is not going to go away. If we're not willing to speak out against fascism, it's got a lot of energy and a lot of propulsion, a lot of motivation to take power by telling people who to hate. So since this is not going away, instead of putting out one anthology, what if we keep speaking out? And we keep speaking out in the form of a regular literary journal. And so reached out to all the authors that we were accepting and said, we're putting out volume 1 and of the Antifa Lit Journal. And that was really cool, very well received, and we're all working together in this kind of non-hierarchical, communitarian way on the editing and putting that together so that we can get it out there quickly. So that's been really exciting and positive, giving people an opportunity to speak out. And so I've loved that. But, and I want to get this story onto the radar for listeners and viewers out there. One of the people who had been accepted had to then kind of reflect on, do I want my name attached to this? Will this be harmful to me? Now, there are a couple of folks where, one is using a pseudonym, one is is going to be printed as anonymous. That's fine. And one of the advantages that we can offer is I am located in Spain, right? I don't have to report in quite the same way or fear de facto consequences, illegal but subtle, pernicious consequences of the behavior of the United States government in quite the same way that other publishers do. I am a member of the Publishing Professionals Against Book Bans leadership group, and we've talked a lot about the fact that for publishers in the United States, this is a very scary time, and I'm in a bit of a privileged position in that I can say to authors that they can't come get me, and I can do what I can to protect you, to protect your identity, that kind of thing. But this poet, who had been accepted, a couple of brilliant poems had been accepted into our literary anthology, had to kind of reflect on this and decided that because their children are naturalized citizens rather than natural-born citizens, although that is a de minimis distinction under the Trump administration, because if they haul you away without a trial, you have no opportunity to say I'm naturalized or natural-born or hold a green card or whatever. There was no trial. Doesn't matter. They can't haul away anyone at this point without recourse. But this person, knowing that their children were particularly vulnerable, decided not to be published, decided, we scheduled for this person to be a guest on the show, decided that was too risky. And I want to honor that. Like, that is a legitimate choice. People will need to decide how much they're willing to risk. And some people are going to take to the streets and show their faces and put their identities out there on social media and say, I oppose this. And some folks are going to wear masks and say, I oppose this and I want to participate and be a body, but I can't risk my family's welfare. And that is legitimate. Everyone needs to figure out how much risk they can endure. And those of us who have a lot of privilege need to recognize that others don't, right? There are people who, by virtue of their gender identity or their skin color, cannot hide in the same way and are already dealing with more than something like a cishet white guy would deal with if I were out protesting in the streets. And so those of us who have less consequences that we face need to step up, right? We need to be out and protesting more on the behalf of people who will face a lot more consequences for that same behavior than we would. So I honor that this person did that, but it makes me it brings to mind this subject that I've wanted to talk about on this show, which is shadow banning. Shadow banning is a form of censorship that this administration has been pushing for. And the way that it works is you create some kind of threat, whether that is a formal legal threat or whether that is kind of a vague, there may be consequences for you kind of threat. This is the, burning a cross in somebody's front yard. We may come back to kill you, right? And that's enough, right? And so the form that this threat has taken in the United States is things like there's a bill currently moving forward, I believe it's in Louisiana, that would make it so that any librarian who checks out a book that is deemed to be obscene according to whom we don't know, right? Again, these are intentionally vague. But if they check out that, not only could they lose their job as a librarian, they would be breaking the law. They would go to jail. And so, reasonably, a lot of librarians are saying, if this passes, I can't continue to be a librarian. Not only can I not check out books, I can't continue to be in this profession at all, because who knows what somebody is going to determine to be obscene that I checked out at the library. And so what another variation on this was the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, where you say the following things will get a teacher fired. And you just put out a vague list, references to the LGBTQIA plus agenda. Well, what does that mean, right? Is that any story that has a queer character is now part of an agenda? And so you scare people. And then what people will do is they will, to use the term that coined by Timothy Schneider, they will obey in advance. Before they've faced the consequence of going to prison, before they've been brought up on charges, whatever, they will decide, you know what, it's not worth the risk to me to hand this kid this book. I just won't do it. And what ends up happening is, without actually formally going through and saying, this book is now banned, this book is now banned, you have de facto banned them, right? You have silently and unofficially made those things unavailable. And as a publishing professional, we're very concerned about this. We recognize that one of the dangers for us in our profession is that we will do this if we're not very conscious, right? We may just say, oh, okay, I'm looking at all these various books that I'm considering publishing, or all these various short stories, or all these various poems. This one's a little edgy. It could get us into trouble. And we'll pull back, and we won't publish it. Now, from the author's point of view, they would never know why. Authors, poets, artists face rejection all the time. And so if you are an author and you're sitting at home and you're getting a rejection letter and you are a cishet white guy, you go, okay, they didn't like it. They which is possible. They didn't like it. It is possible that they had, a bad ham sandwich from the deli today, and that was it. They've got indigestion. You have no idea. You're just sending stuff out into the world and hoping that somebody goes, I love this, I want to publish this, right? And so if you're receiving all these rejections, you won't know. Now, if you are a person of color, if you are a woman, if you are a trans author, you may also suspect maybe they are rejecting me because of my identity. And this is what we call a microaggression. You don't know for sure. And you deal with this constant stress all the time of, is this person treating me this way because of my identity or not? And folks who have more privilege, we literally can't understand this. We have not experienced this. I don't walk through my life day to day saying, is this person maybe stepping in front of me or stepping too far away from me on the sidewalk in a way that's weird because of the way that I look? Now, that is possible because of the way that I look, but it's not, oh, this person hates white people. Oh, this person probably hates men. Or this person probably hates straight people. Like, that's just not a thought process that I have been trained to recognize or even be thoughtful about. And it's a constant stressor, right? And it is legitimate. And this is why this is a big deal for publishing professionals, because nobody would know at first if publishing professionals just said quietly, in our rooms when we're making these decisions, either by ourselves or with a staff. Hey, maybe we just shouldn't publish this trans author, or this black author, this Latino author, this Asian author, this queer author, because we're afraid of the blowback from this administration. So we'll just reject this piece. And this will only be discoverable after the fact through the numbers, right? This is there is a name for this process. I'm trying to remember it. It came out of the legal profession, where they figured out, okay, you can't know to what extent racial profiling is happening till you look at the numbers, and you use this kind of algorithmic accounting process to find out, oh, these kinds of cases. Because in any one individual case, the person is given a penalty that is on the high side of what the law allows. For this crime, you get 3 to 6 years. And it's only when you look at it and you go, oh, okay, but wait, in this court, all the white people are getting 3 and all the black people are getting 6, right? But in the individual case, it was within the bounds of the law. And this came through the legal process and then went into other industries, right? And in education, we then looked at this and went, oh, we're doing this too, students drop out of high school, regardless of the color of their skin. But when you look at the large numbers, you start to see there are clear racial disparities. So what about our system is the problem, right? In time, people will be able to look back and say, oh, okay, lots of queer, trans, non-binary authors, people of color were being published, and then there was a drop-off. But as after the fact, and that's looking at the large numbers. Shadow bans are so dangerous and so pernicious because they will ruin people, right? They will harm people in the present, and we won't know until later, oh, that was because of this shadow banning. But shadow banning, just like any censorship, is not just a harm to the artist. And this is why I wanted to bring this to your attention. This poet wrote a couple of powerful, beautiful poems you will not get to read. And you're going to be denied those poems because this poet was afraid for their children. Now, you're going, 2 poems, big deal, I probably wouldn't have read a couple of poems anyway. Again, this is why this is so pernicious. You don't know what you're being denied. And so if you're willing to say, a couple of poems, this person was afraid, they didn't put them out there into the world, big deal, and the next time the shadow ban isn't about a couple of poems. The next time it's about a TV show. And it's a TV show you would have really enjoyed, but it had a queer character. And that queer character was, the main character. They were essential to the plot, and the studio went, you know what, in this time, somebody's going to yell and scream about DEI. Let's just not make this TV show. Let's just not make this movie. Let's just not put on this play. And you don't know what you're missing. It's not that you knew the film and knew you loved it and had it taken from you. It was taken from you before you were aware of its existence. And it's something you might have loved. Think about all the works of art that you have enjoyed that have a character of color, that have a queer character in them. There are people right now who want to take those things away from you. Now, you won't know what they take away from you in the future. This is the way a shadow ban is so dangerous. So, I want you to be aware. This is happening. Not this could happen. I know I talk a lot about the potential dangers of the rise of fascism, and I say, hey, we could get to the point where somebody is just detained and sent off to a concentration camp. Well, that is happening now, right? And shadow bans. Oh, this is a thing that could happen. This is happening. People are self-censoring. In this case, the publisher wasn't the one doing the censoring. The artist was the one doing the censoring. But I'm sure there are publishers who are making those kinds of choices, gatekeepers who are saying, not on this platform, right? I've seen this on social media platforms where they will say, oh, if you post a bunch of stuff about rah rah, yay, the military is great and is support our troops, that is not considered political. And so the algorithm goes, yay, people love that. And then if you say, I am concerned about military spending to support a country like Israel that is actively engaged in a genocide, the algorithm says, you just said the G word, you just mentioned Israel, but not in a way that was positive. This is now political speech. That's a kind of censorship, right? Where the viewer, the person engaging with this platform, will never know what ideas were removed. And what can end up happening is the phenomena we've already seen with Fox News viewers, right? With Newsmax viewers, where Fox News is brilliant about this. They're very clever. What they do is they put out a thing each day. This goes back to Roger Ailes, where he says, hey, on every show, you have to hit this point 3 times. And it'll be, here's a bill that I want you all to say, mention that is a great idea. And here is an immigrant who committed some crime. This goes back to the actual Nazis in Germany, where you overhype and place way more emphasis on, in Germany, it was crimes committed by people who are Jewish. And if you keep that drumbeat, then you get people to say, wow, the Jews here in Prague are committing all of the crime, right? When in fact, they're committing less than the non-Jewish population. But the drumbeat, the constant story. And so Roger Ailes did this, a person of color committed this crime. And again, rather than showing, hey, white people commit more crime, right, in the United States, if you're seeing a story, well, and this is what's so clever, he put this thing out, he puts out this memo each day, and it says these are the 3 that you're going to cover. And so if you watch one show on Fox News, you go, okay, they mentioned these 3 things, I disagree or I agree. A lot of folks who are not Fox News inclined just kind of go, okay, I experienced that, it's not for me, I'm leaving. But if you are, say, a retiree who does nothing but turn on Fox News and watch it for 6, 8, 10 hours, just in the background, right? What'll happen to you is you'll start to go, everybody is saying this. Everybody. Because you're hearing these ideas over and over and over from different mouthpieces. And you don't know, they were all told by the same individual that these are the things they are supposed to say. And so this is a really effective way of convincing people of something. And a shadow ban works in the inverse to the same effect. Because what ends up happening is certain voices are removed. And the voices that remain are so constant, so ever present, that then people who are scrolling through their social media, looking through the books at the bookstore, looking at the movies on the marquee at the movie theater, say, this is what everyone wants. Oh, there are no movies about people of color. Oh, there are no movies about queer characters anymore. I guess that's because these people don't exist or aren't important to buyers. And then it becomes a cycle, right? Hey, what movie did well last year? This one. It was a movie with no BIPOC characters. It was a movie with no queer characters, and it was the big blockbuster box office smash last summer. Let's make more of those. And the people who are making those decisions at that point aren't even conscious that they are participating in producing the same stuff, because they're just saying what will be successful. And so we have to be really conscious. We have to wake up. Once you see this, once you have awakened to it, you start to realize the system reinforces itself. There's a term for this kind of waking up. But, I'm afraid if I even mention to you that this term, which comes out of black academia, to be woke, is, right away people are going to go, oh, that's it, I'm checking out. Once you wake up to the structural racism, the structural sexism, the ways that this system perpetuates itself, you can never unsee it. And that is what the right is very afraid of, is that you will see it, right? There have to be a whole lot of barriers put in place so that you do not become aware of this thing that is going on all around you. And I want you to be aware of the fact that the shadow banning and the self-censorship is not a danger in the future. It is your present reality. There are things you already aren't seeing because people are afraid of deportations, of people being sent off to camps, because that sending people off to camps has begun. And once it starts, again, it is a threat to people that will change their behavior. And we have to decide, how will that change our behavior, right? If you are saying to yourself, I am afraid of that, so I'm going to cower and not do the things I was going to do, you will see more of it. You will reinforce it. But if you are willing to say, this is wrong, that thing that I was going to do, I'm going to do it more loudly. You push back, and you make that not as scary for someone else. And that's the key. We've got to make sure that other people know we will protect them, we will stand with them, we will scream and yell Mahmoud Khalil's name when he is abducted and sent away, right? And say, this is wrong. When Marco Rubio says the reason Mahmoud Khalil is being sent off to, a place where he will likely be killed, is, Marco Rubio says, for his beliefs. We need to stand up and say, that is unacceptable, not just because of Mahmoud Khalil, right? That's enough. That is sufficient reason to say that is wrong, but because the threat to Mahmoud Khalil is a threat to everyone else. It is this menace. This could happen to you. You better start self-censoring. So when you see those stories, think about what they are trying to change about your behavior and figure out how you're going to push back against that. And I encourage you, whether or not it's the Antifa Lit Journal or other, trans authors, BIPOC authors, artists, musicians, find the folks who are most threatened right now, and support them. Go to that concert, buy that book, go see that movie, so that you challenge that structural, institutional inclination towards a homogeneous, fascist, right-wing dystopia, right? You say to Hollywood, I will see that movie. I will give you money for that movie. And they're going to be a lot more inclined in the future to say, oh, okay, make more of those movies. Because even though right-wing trolls may yell and scream about, a Black Little Mermaid, people watched it, right? If you don't invest, you encourage the system. If you do invest, you challenge and encourage the system to move in this other direction. It's your dollars, it's your attention. This is an attention economy. Your eyes on certain things on your phone are being watched. What do you click on? What do you look at, right? Be mindful about what you are supporting right now and recognize there are things you literally cannot support because already they're being taken from you. Okay, so that's the dour part of the show. But I want to come back to something that I think is hopefully a little lighter when we come back. So we're going to go to our break. Doug, if you'll fire up the ad music. But when we return, I'm going to talk about a daydream I've been having that I'm excited about because who knows, it could come true thanks to this weird world we live in. Hey readers and reviewers, I want to put out an all call for guests who are fighting back against fascism. If you know an author or artist of any kind who is using their art or their platform to push back, especially if they are doing so in an interesting way that deserves more attention and support, share this show with them and encourage them to email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com and we'll get them scheduled. And if you're looking for inspiring or practical ways you can push back, be sure to subscribe to the show so you catch all the great guests folks are going to recommend. See you here each week. In honor of Poetry Month, this week's Writers Not Writing is brought to you by Veronica Gonzalez Arredondo's book, I Am Not That Body. This collection, with beautiful side-by-side translations by Alison A. DeFries, contains poems about femicide, immigration, extinction and survival, disappearing landscapes, displaced peoples, and the inhospitable climates, geographically and metaphorically, that remain in their wake. Veronica Gonzalez Arredondo explores the arid desert ecosystems of Mexico with the beauty and talent that has made her such an esteemed award-winning poet in her home country. And thanks to Alison A. DeFries, it's now available to the English reading world as well. I Am Not That Body bears witness to the plague of gender violence in Mexico, sublime in its masterful use of religious imagery, metaphor, and concise, almost staccato lines. I Am Not That Body is a necessary and timely read for understanding the recent wave of protest against femicide in Mexico, writes Edwin Alanis Garcia, author of Galeria. Rarely has a poetry collection been dedicated to femicide in its many ugly shapes facing migrant women in their journey to reach the U.S.-Mexico border. Through haunting imagery and gripping lines, these poems render visible and audible the victims of femicide, invisibilized, silenced, but never erased from collective memory, writes Ghada Murad. Get your copy wherever fine books are sold, and get 10% off your whole order at the NotAPipePublishing store using the coupon code SHOWFAN.
You deserve a vacation.
How about a trip to a dude ranch on a colony planet?
Or a journey to a universe where wizards call lightning down from the sky and calm rumbling volcanoes?
Or a holiday tour of the major cities of Europe with vampires and werewolves and witches as guides.
Or maybe just a nice hot sudsy bath with a book of poetry that will make you cry and sigh and laugh.
We've got you covered.
A paperback will appear on your doorstep each month to whisk you away, and you'll return refreshed, enlightened, and ready to make the world we share a brighter place for everyone.
Or if you prefer, you can sign up for a quarterly subscription and get 4 YA titles, 4 adult titles, or 4 collections of poetry per year.
Plus, you'll get book club questions from the author before you start the book, and an interview with the author afterwards.
So, if you are in a book group or want to start one, this is everything you need in a kit. Will we occasionally throw in some extra surprises just to say thank you to our members? Of course.
You can also give someone their very own membership with all of the rights and privileges pertaining thereto.
So, find a reward level that's right for you.
And share this with your friends.
Join the Indulge Your Shelf book club today. Your bookshelves deserve a little pampering. Welcome back, everybody. Just Doug, the producer, and I this week, and I was telling Doug, I always ask this question to authors: what have you been daydreaming about lately? And often, the most common answer is about their work, which is not a surprise. Artists think about whatever their daydream got, translates often into their work, and so authors, visual artists, draw what they've been thinking and feeling. Dancers use their bodies to express what they have been feeling. Musicians write songs about what they've been feeling. That's not a surprise, right? But every once in a while I get an answer that's not about the work, and these tend to be really interesting, kind of surprising ones. 2 weeks ago, Phoebe Barton was on the show and was talking about surviving a nuclear holocaust. Go back and listen to that one. It's fascinating. And then last week, Jennifer Rood was talking about a pre-planned trip to Washington, D.C. with her mother and what she wants to take her mom to see in D.C. and now, the way that will be different in the midst of seeing, what has been removed from Washington, D.C. So that was an interesting conversation we had about that, too. So, I'm now posing this question to myself. What have I been daydreaming about? And I'm trying to think which is not in the work, right? I'm currently writing a fantasy novel and editing the 3rd in my paranormal series. Outside of those, what have I been daydreaming about? And one of the things that I have daydreamed about for as long as I can remember, literally going back to when I was a young child, is living in a castle. I just think castles are very, very cool. And I think they could be updated to be, very modern on the inside and still be these beautiful ancient structures on the outside. Now, this is, ridiculous pie in the sky. Although I will say, when my wife and I got married, we put on our the list you create for your kind of wish list. We put, here are some charities to give to, and then here are some literal listings for castles that cost like $15 million. People gave to the charities, which is good. Nobody gave us a castle, which is a little disappointing, but so it goes. So I've been, I've had this long-term fantasy of living in a castle of some kind. Could be a small castle. I'm fine with a small castle. And as an adult, I have dreamed about running a writer's retreat, a place where authors can escape the world and just work on their craft in the company of other authors. I think writers' retreats are really cool. I've had the chance to experience some of these. One time I went to a writers' retreat where we were in like one-room cabins where you just had a room at a camp, a camp that most of the year ran as a children's camp, but had a writers' retreat, and that was it. You just were in a room, and then occasionally you could take a walk to the beach, and then you could just write. And it was incredibly productive. We got together in the evenings, and we talked about what we were working on, but no obligations. It was just about producing work. And so I would love to get to live in that kind of community at some point. So we find ourselves in this circumstance where things in the United States are not great. And the different ways that they are not great may incline some folks to say, I would really like to have an exit plan. Potentially, I'd like to have a way to maybe get out of here. And also, I really don't want my money invested in, a stock market that is just a mechanism right now for grifters to, move money based on insider knowledge of Trump's next whim, right? That is not a safe place to put your money. They're even looking at it and saying, I'm not even sure the US dollar is safe. It is not, this is a person who doesn't understand the benefit of the strong dollar model, which has propped up a lot of the US economy artificially, mind you, for a long, long time. It's a huge advantage the United States has to be able to say to the rest of the world, go ahead, you want to trade oil? You got to use dollars to buy and sell it. And being the default currency of the world is this real benefit. And the rest of the world is now saying, I'm not sure the US dollar is safe. And as a consequence, the value of your dollars is going to go down. And so you can pull your money out of the stock market and put it into a bank account, but that's not necessarily going to make it safer. You can, purchase land with your money, but if the US economy is treated the way it's being treated by Donald Trump, that's not going to be necessarily safe. Land was always seen as the one thing that never ever goes down. It only goes up until the Great Recession, when it went down. And a lot of people woke up to the fact that, that there is nothing that is infinite and guaranteed in terms of its safety. And so I've been thinking about this. People are going to be looking for this. And I have thought, what if, and again, nothing is guaranteed, so I can't say to people, this is a, guaranteed safer bet, but what if people were willing to say, let's invest in a writer's retreat? Let's create that space for ourselves where authors could come and they could, pay some, normal kind of hotel rates to stay at a writer's retreat. But the people who are investors would own a share of that space. And then they could say to themselves, if I ever needed to hightail it, I know where I could go. They wouldn't have citizenship, right? But they would have a landing pad. And the 90 days of their tourist visa, they would know, okay, I can go to this place while I look for a place to stay. I've got this room that I own in, via a contract. I've got this share of this writer's retreat that I could own. So I don't know if this daydream will come to fruition at all. there are a lot of things that would have to happen first. I need my, what they call here, a NIE, which is an acronym, the NIE, that number that is kind of like your social security number. Once I have that, we could purchase a place here to live, and if we purchased that place, somebody could then buy a share of it through an American company, NotAPipePublishing, and own a portion of this this writer's retreat. So that is an idea that's kind of pie in the sky at this point, maybe. It's just a hope, but I think it could be really cool. So if you think that that is something that I should continue to pursue, if that is something that sounds interesting to you at all, please, in the comments, whatever, let me know. Yeah, I would love to, have a room in a castle that I know I could escape to if need be. And then, based on the number of people who are interested, we could start seriously looking into it and see what kind of space we could afford and what kind of space would provide those rooms for those investors. But I think, maybe the nightmare of Trump. The nightmare of Trump is going to create communities in a whole lot of positive ways. Again, to reference Jennifer Rood last week, who was on the show, they've started doing a local poetry reading as a response to, people who met one another, who were poets at protests. And they're going to create these communities, and these communities will persist. They will last longer than this fascist regime. Fascist regimes are not sustainable, right? This thing will fall apart. All the people who are sacrificing their political futures, saying, well, I have to, show that I'm properly subservient to Trump, they are in the long run doomed. There is not going to be a way for them to come back from this and say, oh, well, that's the way it was, but I'm, No, they will go into the wilderness. The question is that in 4 years or 10 years or 15 years, and the damage that is done is going to persist as well, right? The rest of the world is not going to say, oh, now that a different politician has been elected by, 52% of Americans, the United States is now a reliable trading partner. They're going to say, we can't count on you. You've shown us we can't count on you. And that's going to take decades to repair, right? But in the same way, communities like the small community of poets who is getting together in Grants Pass, in coastal Southern Oregon, or potentially a writer's retreat where a community could form, that community would last longer than me, than you, than this regime. And so it's a dream, but it's a dream that fills me with a very specific kind of hope, a hope in building community. Not just I get to live in this castle that I've always wanted to live in, right? But that I could be surrounded by people who are committed to art and who are working together to get better at our art. I just think that would be wonderful. So we'll see if that happens, but that's what I've been daydreaming about. Last thing I always ask authors is about where they can be found. You clearly have found me. Check out the socials, all that stuff, and do upvote this show. That is nice. Whatever podcasting app or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, click on that thumbs up. That is helpful. Again, building a community, right? We're trying to connect with other people in a positive way right now. It's going to be really important, and pushing back when you see people who are, jumping in the comments, whether that's me or, for folks who are dealing with a lot worse circumstances than I am, protect one another right now. I've been communicating with, friends and family in the United States, and I always sign off my emails with, stay safe and protect your neighbors. Because right now, this is a time when, watching out for your own well-being and your own mental health is really important, and also cannot be your only focus, right? How are you going to be protecting yourself so you can protect other people? And what are you doing to protect others? It's going to be really vital right now. Okay, so I don't know if this is a shorter version of the show than normal or longer, but I can tell you for certain that it feels longer. I don't know if I have a visible sunburn yet, but I expect that by next week you will see some dark red on the top of my head and you'll go, oh yeah, that was last week's show. Yeah. So I tried this thing. It was an experiment, and in the future I will wear a hat. Take care, everybody. See you next week.
If I take